Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson McCurry. First off, apologies to the listeners for not doing a post-game show Sunday after that embarrassing loss to the New England Patriots. But if you want to hear like anybody's thoughts, go check out the rest of the Browns podcast community because they all did a fine job in what's been a bizarre week and dealing with all the nonsense about Baker, the coaching staff, etc. I mean, it's just been a crazy week. I've been trying to avoid it, but we're moving on. We got the Detroit Lions this week, and who better to come on and talk Detroit Lions and the guy that covers both the Detroit Lions and the Cleveland Browns. He's contributor for the Browns Wire. He's the managing editor for the Lions Wire, both part of USA Today Sports. It's Jeff Risdon. Jeff, this is your first time on the podcast, which is crazy because we've been doing this for 4.5 years now, and you've been covering the Browns that long, and it's a shame that we never got you on, but thanks for coming on, man.
I appreciate you getting me on. We've tried to do this a couple times and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But I'm very happy to be with you, and this is a fun week for me. I hope, anyways. Neither team's really doing what they hope to do this year, so it's I'm looking forward to getting a game in between two teams. I don't have to watch two games at the same time. That for me is going to be the highlight of my weekend.
Yeah, that's the first thing I want to talk about. You've covered the Browns for a long time, and now you're the managing editor over at the Lions Wire. Like, what's it like covering two franchises that have had so many twists and turns throughout their history? And I mean, you covered bad Browns teams. Now you're jumping in with the Lions, and they're off to a bad start. Almost, they could have been the first team to go 0-16 and 0-17, but obviously, this past Sunday they kind of put a hammer to that.
Yeah, thank God for Mason Rudolph. That was a very good thing. It's I'm old enough that I remember before Brian Sipe in Browns lore. I remember Billy Sims is actually one of the reasons why, even though I grew up on the west side of Cleveland, that I am a Detroit Lions fan and have been. I was just really loved him. I loved Chris Spielman. Growing up playing high school ball in Ohio, you couldn't not in that era. And so those both being Lions like solidified my fandom. But like I've always, my parents still live in Cleveland. My family's still from there. I still feel very attached to the team, but it would be nice if both of them were good at the same time. And that hasn't really happened in my lifetime. Like 1991, the one year that the Lions actually won a playoff game in the Super Bowl era was like the hiccup year after Marty Ball, which was unfortunate. I learned a long time ago not to expect to win in football, and to appreciate when the teams do well. I am as you can see, I am wearing a Cleveland Cavaliers sweatshirt. I'm a massive Cavs fan as well, and I cherish the sports victories that I get, notably in 2016. That's the pinnacle of my sportsdom because I just haven't had a chance to cheer for it. So for me, football has become much more clinical, much more of a job. I don't get down much anymore. Last Sunday was rough. I will freely admit. So my Sundays, I watch the Lions on the big TV, and I have the laptop with the Lion or the Browns right next to me. I'm like kind of switching between the two. After Kendrick Bourne made that catch, I flipped the laptop closed and didn't revisit the Browns at all. And I hope that some of your listeners did that too, because it was better for my mental health that way. That was just awful football.
Yeah, I feel the same way as you. Like, I treat watching the Browns like a job now because I wrote about them for a while. I've been doing the podcast 4.5 years. Like, I don't get emotionally attached. Like, sometimes I get really excited about a win or ticked off about a loss, but it doesn't affect me the way it affects other fans now. Like you, I treat it like a job, and you just kind of move on to the next thing. With the Lions, like, we went 0-16 back in 08. They had some good years with Stafford and Calvin Johnson and others, but seems like now the new era with Dan Campbell, Jared Goff at the quarterback position, and like they've taken another turn downward. And obviously 08-1, like, the tie, like, how did the fans feel about tying instead of, potentially losing another game? And, everybody started talking about potential 0-17 season.
Yeah, it's a good question because I think if you would have told Lions fans going into that game that, oh, you're going to tie, they would have been like, hell yeah, man, give me that. But the way that they lost because their fifth kicker of the season, keep that in mind, it's week 10, their fifth kicker of the season missed an extra point and missed a field goal, a 45-yard field goal. And if you've seen it, you know how awful it was. He looked like a guy, it's Ryan Santoso, he's no longer with the team. Uh, he looked like a guy who had never played golf before stepping up to the first tee at the Masters. That's exactly what his attempt looked like, and it failed miserably, and then the Steelers thankfully fumbled away an opportunity to seize the win at the end. So I will say it is better than losing. It is certainly not as good as winning.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, just thinking back to the 1-31 mark with the Browns, there were so many times you thought they were going to win, they don't win, and then they did, and they win the one game, and then 2018, the way the opener with Pittsburgh, like that's how I feel. It can feel like the way Lions felt. Yeah, that one was so hard because if I were going to win it with the Schobert fumble return, then Miles gets a penalty, and then the shanked kick at the end. It's like I feel for Detroit fans when you get so close to winning and then stuff like that happens. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. So the nightmare for me, the kick. So they lost. The Lions have lost on a NFL record last second kick by Justin Tucker, 66 yards, where they ignored a delay of game penalty that was obvious on the Ravens, and even the NFL came back and said so. So yeah. Justin Tucker, obvious Browns tormentor. Then they lose to the Vikings, the exact same score, 19-17, 2 weeks later, when Greg Joseph, of all people, hits a 55-yarder at the buzzer after he'd missed a 37-yarder that was at least 25 yards wide right earlier in the game. That's been tough. We had Zane Gonzalez here. Austin Seibert is currently on our injured reserve because he broke his ankle last week in practice somehow. Nobody really knows how that happened. Wow. There's a lot of ties between the two teams, and especially in the kicking. So the Lions had two kickers over 36 years, and since and then they had a bad year and a half. Matt Prater came in and rescued us, and now we're going through life without Matt Prater, and it really sucks. I would love to have Chase McLaughlin in Detroit.
Yeah, without question. I mean, it's nice that the Browns have found a stable kicker after going through so many in the last 8 years without Phil Dawson for sure. So this week, Jared Goff sidelined right now with an oblique injury, and they're already talking like if he can't go, Tim Boyle, who came over from Green Bay after spending 3-4 seasons with them as a backup to Rodgers, is the oblique injury serious? Like Goff really potentially can't go Sunday, and if so, from what you've seen out of Tim Boyle in the preseason or other things like that, what's your outlook for Tim Boyle heading into Sunday if he's potentially the starting quarterback?
Okay. At this point, as we're recording this on Thursday evening, I expect Tim Boyle to be starting. And if you asked any Lions writer this week, they will tell you the same. That Goff, the injury, he cannot put full zip on the ball. That was very obvious. And that's a very dangerous thing with Jared Goff because he doesn't have the greatest arm to begin with. If you watched the interception that he threw last week, Khalif Raymond, one of the best Lions wide receiver is Khalif Raymond. I'm sure most Browns fans probably haven't heard of him. He is the best we have. He got 5 or 6 yards behind the Pittsburgh defense, 40 yards down the field, and he had to sprint back 10 yards to break up two different Steelers from intercepting the ball. That's Jared Goff. Tim Boyle won't do that. Tim Boyle has a very live arm. We watched him a lot in training camp and preseason. I was over there for just about every session of training camp. Have seen a couple of practices since then. He's got a deep arm. He can throw it over the top. He can run. He's a good runner. He's a good athlete. He can sort of tuck and run. He's got some, I don't want to say Jeff Garcia to him, but because he's bigger and he's certainly got a better arm than Jeff. But that kind of I'm going to take this into my own hands whether the play says it or not type of mentality. He really, really struggled on short passes. And that's going to be interesting because the Lions offense is full of short passes. Last week at halftime, Jared Goff's average air yards distance on attempted passes was 0.1. 0.1, not 1 yard, 0.1 yards. He has the lowest average air yards in the league. Some of that is Goff, some of that's him being a timid wuss, and some of that is the offense under Anthony Lynn just not trying to threaten down the field. They have one of my big issues. I'll riff here for a quick second. On 3rd and long, the Lions have thrown what is it? And when it's 3rd and more than 5 yards, they have thrown the ball past the sticks 5 out of 49 times that on their intended route. That's the Lions' offense. Some of that's obviously on Jared Goff, but there's also a lot of short passing and quick hit precision passes, and that's not what Tim Boyle does well. So we're all kind of wondering what in the world's going to happen at quarterback, because he doesn't fit the offense that Jared Goff runs. David Blau fits that much better, but he, for whatever reason, and I don't necessarily fault the Lions for this, but they just don't think like he's the answer, so they want to see what they got in Boyle. Who, and by the way, Tim Boyle did beat out Jordan Love last year, their first-round pick in Green Bay, to beat Aaron Rodgers' backup last year. He was the number 2. Love was the number 3. So that sort of tells you that there is some ability there. We just got to go see it, see what he can do.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how he performs, especially against the Browns defense. That's obviously under some serious pressure right now with the heavy criticism towards Joe Woods. The one thing that the Lions
deserves it.
Yes, he absolutely does. And that could be a whole nother podcast we can
do. Oh,
yeah.
Sure. We'll stay off that for now.
Right. The one thing that Tim Boyle could definitely lean on is the running game. And last week, I thought the Lions ran the ball extremely well against Pittsburgh. DeAndre Swift, Godwin, and I definitely rehearsed this, Jeff. Ugbuwiki. I don't think I might have even botched it there. And Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, Igwe
Buike.
We call him Iggy.
Okay, Iggy's better. But yeah. But Swift, Iggy, and Jamar Jefferson ran the ball extremely well against a Pittsburgh defense, over 220 yards. For a guy that's making his first start, I mean, the Browns' run defense has been shaky at some points this week. I would expect that the Lions' offense is probably going to be run heavy to make Boyle comfortable going into Sunday for his first start.
Oh, absolutely. And Boyle's athletic ability does give them the option to do some RPO action too, and option run. The read option, on a stretch play or something like that. One of the things that they did last week was Taylor Decker, the left tackle, came back healthy. First game of the year. That moved Penei Sewell to the right side. So the old right tackle was Matt Nelson. They put him in as an extra tackle. So they cut former Browns tight end and former Lions tight end, Darren Fells, during the week at his request. He wanted out. I don't blame him. He's 35 years old. He wants to win. That ain't happening in Detroit. So they played Nelson as the blocking tight end, as an extra tackle, and it worked brilliantly against Pittsburgh. If you ever want to see Devin Bush, the Steelers linebacker, look like crap, watch him last week. It's the worst game I've ever seen him play. And I've seen just about every game that he played in Michigan too. It was rough, man, and it worked really well. The power that they have, they've got a good interior line. Jonah Jackson, for Buckeyes fans that cross pollinate in Browns land, is doing pretty well at left guard. He's a solid left guard. They really seem to authoritative. They're like, we want to take it to Pittsburgh. We're going to go out there. And we don't care if we run 3 times and go out, because we know we can't throw, so we're going to run. And I think there's going to be some more of that. So it wouldn't surprise me. Look, Swift's a little banged up this week. The regular starter is actually Jamal Williams. He's missed the last 2 games. He was limited in practice today. There is hope he will be there. And if he's there, that's a huge boon, because he's really, really good between the tackles. Swift is much better sort of outside the tackles. He's got some Kareem Hunt to him, in that you don't necessarily want to slam him up inside. You sort of want to get him off tackle, get him where you maybe have a cross block coming or a counter play or something like that. Just a straight A gap dive. That's not what he does. That's where Jamal Williams comes in really well. Jamar Jefferson's also really good at that. Unfortunately, he got hurt at the end of his touchdown run. Minka Fitzpatrick Horsecolor tackled him. They didn't call it, of course, because it's Pittsburgh. And he is out and probably won't be back, unfortunately. So, there's a definite chance for the Lions to line up and try to punch the Browns in the mouth. And Malik Jackson's going to have to play better. Malik McDowell's going to have to play better. Tommy Togiai might need to get more run for the Browns to try and stop that, because the Lions do run block well, and they don't get away from the run when they're losing, which is something that's a little bit unusual, especially if you're a Browns fan. You see what Cincinnati did in the game where Baker looked phenomenal and everybody wanted to give him $40 million a year 2 weeks ago, and now everybody wants him cut.
Yeah,
I have opinions, Jay. I have opinions, dude.
That's good. Hey, I'm all for him. You mentioned Khalif Raymond, who's having a breakout year at the wide receiver position for them, and they have Hawkinson at tight end, and they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown earlier this year.
Yeah.
like, how do you feel about the wide receiver and like the wide receiver and the tight end positions going forward? Because, it seems like Jared Goff's the immediate quarterback. They could draft one next April, but that I wouldn't bank on it at this point based on the
Yeah.
draft and the draft prospects. But how do you feel about
Yeah.
the skill positions outside of the running backs?
Oh, it's bad. It's Corey Coleman, Kenny Britt bad.
Oof.
It might actually be worse than that. At least T.J. Hawkinson is a legit Pro Bowl tight end. He's coming off probably the worst game of his career against Pittsburgh. Some of that was misuse. Some of that was him not playing well either. He picked up an awful, awful dumb penalty, and he was guilty of it too. That pushed that god awful field goal back at the end, 10 extra yards. So he's got a little bit of stain on him there. He's a really good tight end. He's a very good, accomplished receiving tight end. He is not on the Kelsey Kittle level, but he's certainly in that next tier with guys like Darren Waller and Kyle Pitts. I guess we have to throw in there. He's really good. Raymond can fly. He's really fast. He gets to top speed right away. He's small. He's not unlike Marquise Brown of the Ravens. To draw a more familiar parallel. Like Amon-Ra is like very, very diet Jarvis Landry. There's just no twitch to that guy at all. He's tough, he's physical, he's smart, but he's just not a great athlete. And he hasn't figured out, like Juice did in his Miami heyday and in the first couple of seasons in Cleveland, how to use that really well yet. In fact, I'm hopeful that they do a jersey swap after the game because the scouting report on them is very similar, and I would love for Juice to impart some of that on Amon-Ra. He's good. He's going forward. Raymond is probably a niche like number 4, number 3 outside wide receiver. Amon-Ra is probably your backup slot. He can maybe start in the slot if you've got a good flanker on the outside, but they don't have that. They don't have. They signed Tyrell Williams. They signed Brashad Perriman. Williams got a concussion after 9 snaps and is now gone. Perriman stunk, was awful from the beginning, the first training camp practice. So they need a lot of help. They need a lot of help at the skill positions. And the number 2 tight end right now is Brock Wright, who's an undrafted tight end out of Notre Dame, who actually played pretty well last week. I will give him credit. I wasn't his biggest fan throughout the summer. He didn't play well. But he showed me something last week. He also blocked well. They ran 13 personnel with an extra tackle a couple of times last week and wound up running pretty well out of it. So they're not afraid to line up in an exotic formation that the Browns probably haven't seen in a long time.
Yikes. Getting to this defense, Jeff, the defense, I know this defense is bad when I don't notice many names on that side of the ball when I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I know Michael Brockers, who's been around a long time, Trey Flowers, who was a big free agent signing a couple of years ago. Julian Okwara was a guy that I wanted the Browns to go get in free agency. He ended up re-signing with Detroit, but a lot of unknown on that side of the ball. And that probably makes sense why they're one of the worst defenses in the league.
Yeah, they play hard, they try hard, they're just not that good,
right?
Unfortunately. Jeff Okuda's out. His replacement and at the outside corner was Ifeatu Melifonwu, a third-round pick out of Syracuse that was playing pretty well. He's out. He's been out since week 2. Okuda was lost in week 1. So since then, our outside corners are Amani Oruwariye, who's solid. He's a capable outside corner. He's not necessarily an asset, but he's not a guy that's like going to get you killed. And the other corners have been Jerry Jacobs and AJ Parker. Both of them are undrafted rookies. I love Jerry. I will make an admission. He is a frequent guest on the Detroit Lions podcast that I do. He's a great guy. He's a really easy guy to root for. He's had his ups and downs, as you would. He's been much better than you would expect out of an undrafted rookie. He's a good athlete. He's a fantastic tackler, but he's going to have some lapses. They don't have a good safety. Will Harris is the Detroit version of Andrew Sendejo, except he's a little bit more of a likable guy. Tracy Walker is the good safety, and he's having a great year. Unfortunately, he got a concussion last week. It sounds like he will be back. He's been in practice this week, so he should be good to go. He's an asset. He's a good one. But yeah, they don't really rush the passer all that well. Nick Williams up front can generate a little bit of a rush. They got a great, I will prop him up, rookie nose tackle, Elaine McNeil, third-round pick, phenomenal. Probably the best rookie defensive tackle in the league right now. But that again, that's like Togiai's in that group and isn't like terribly far from the top. As bad, that's how bad this class is. He's a keeper. Linebackers. Alex Anzalone is what Browns fans hope that Mack Wilson would ever become, and that's probably a pretty low bar. It's not great. He's okay. He's been better since they dumped Jamie Collins, who just simply got in the way too much. They're a try-hard group. They're very well coached. They are getting better week by week. They're playing hard, but they just don't have an alpha dog. They don't even have a lot of beta dogs. So this is a group that they need a star. They need an impact player. The best player is probably Trey Flowers, and he has not practiced this week, and I don't know if you'll see him Sunday. Outside linebacker, former defensive end, kind of a power-oriented player, and not a great player, but he's good for 6 to 7 sacks and plays the run, sets the edge well. But they just don't have any real difference makers on that side of the ball. If they can get in play position and make a couple of plays, they're going to keep it interesting. But they are a team that they've got to get better. They got to get all the youngsters have to grow up together. And it is nice seeing they're a very well coached unit. They're a very well coached team in terms of player development. They've got a lot of it to do.
So you mentioned they don't have any playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, and the way things are looking right now with 8 games to go, Jeff, they're going to be in line to get the number 1 pick in the draft. And we mentioned earlier, there's no quarterbacks worthy of taking at that pick. There is a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball worthy of it, and that's Kayvon Thibodeau. Is it safe to say that Detroit might be tanking to make sure they get the Oregon pass rusher with the top pick in the draft?
I don't know if they're tanking or not. I just don't think they're very talented.
True.
Yeah, if it's certainly not the players that are on the field, and it's certainly not Dan Campbell's nature. He would probably try to bite your kneecap for that. All the Detroit fans are just raining crap at me right now because I used that analogy. We hate that, by the way. But
I can understand.
Yeah, it was cool. I loved it, and I like Dan Campbell. I think he's doing a good job. He just doesn't have a lot to work with. I don't know. Look, Thibodeau would be great. I will say, I think that we start, as the draft community, need to start considering Aiden Hutchinson as a very viable potential number 1 overall pick. Because he is going to test better than either Bosa brother, and look where they got drafted. And he's actually put up better stats at Michigan than they did at Ohio State. So there are 2 names at the top there, and fortunately, with the Lions being where they are at 0-8-1, the Texans are 1-8. Those are going to be the top 2 picks, barring the Jets absolutely collapsing, and well, that could happen because they're starting Joe Flacco. Oh my god,
yeah.
Dude, there's some bad football this year, and I'm watching way too much of it.
Without question. You mentioned Dan Campbell. You said you like him. You think he's the right man. You do think he's the right man. He's the right leader for this job.
Yeah, I do. He's making some rookie mistakes. That's to be expected. He doesn't have the horses that he needs. I like the way he handles the adversity. I like that he took over play calling last week. That Anthony Lynn is the offensive coordinator is on borrowed time. It wouldn't shock me if he doesn't finish the year in Detroit. So Campbell, this is a former NFL tight end, played in the Bill Parcells system, coached alongside Sean Payton, was the assistant head coach in New Orleans. Picked up a lot of those things, and he implemented a lot of those things. The players absolutely love him to a man, and the players that didn't love him are gone, and they're not missed. He made some great hires as assistants, guys like Deuce Staley as the running backs coach, Aaron Glenn is your defensive coordinator, Aubrey Pleasant is the defensive backs coach, Antoine Randall L. I mean, you're going to recognize a lot of these names here. Hank Fraley is our offensive line coach, and a very good one, former Browns center. There's the emphasis on having relatable players like, oh, I played as that dude in Madden. A lot of the players said that throughout training camp, like, oh yeah, I used to play as you as Madden, coach. And they're learning from him, and that is going over really well. Again, it's just not a very talented team. It's very different feel from the 0-17 or 0-16 Browns, who I thought were a talented enough team to win 4, maybe 5 games. They were poorly coached, and they had a god-awful quarterback who turned the ball over in the red zone too much. This team just doesn't have the talent. They've come close. They've played hard. They do play up well. You saw what they did against Pittsburgh. I think we would consider Pittsburgh a superior opponent than a lot of the teams. They played very well. They almost beat the Ravens. They almost beat the 49ers. They almost beat the Packers. They were in that game. It was a lot closer than the final score would reflect. You know, they've really struggled though. Again, like Philadelphia just blew their doors off. Cincinnati, which is a good team too, just absolutely destroyed them. And honestly, I worry. I'll put my Browns hat on real fast. I worry about what Cleveland can do because they don't have an answer for Anthony Schwartz and Donovan Peoples-Jones on the outside. Look, I like the young corners. I'm going to talk them up as much as I can. The plain fact is they don't have the speed and they don't have the coverage help to stay with those guys. So if I'm the Browns, I'm hurling it down the field as much as possible because that's what Cincinnati did, and the Lions were just defenseless to stop it. So I do like Campbell. He's getting, I don't want to say he's like universally received, but I think most Lions fans understand what he's dealing with, and they appreciate the fact that he's not Matt Patricia, who was, oh God, I'm having flashbacks now of covering Hugh Jackson and Matt Patricia in the same season, and I want to scream. Oh, what a nightmare!
You poor man.
I earned hazard duty pay, man.
It's as you need it for that. I mean, that's terrible.
Then I went to Freddie Kitchens. I had 2 days in a row where I drove from Lions practice in the morning to Browns practice in the afternoon, where I watched Matt Patricia in the morning and Freddie Kitchens coach in the afternoon. I did that 2 days in a row. My parents live out by Sandusky, so it's kind of in between. I stayed there and went in it. And oh my God, I was ready to just go jump in the lake.
Did you get therapy after that?
I need some. Maybe this is my therapy. I talk it out. That's what I do podcasts for. It's my therapy sessions.
That or talk to Jared, our buddy Jared, because he can help you out with that too.
Yeah, he can.
And how do you?
He's my combine roommate. We were roommated at the combine for years and years now.
Oh, for sure. Jared's good people.
He is,
and he's your boss, kind of right now too, right?
Sorta, yeah.
Sorta, yeah.
A little bit.
And how do you feel about Brad Holmes, the general manager? Obviously, spent a long time under Les Snead in St. Louis / Los Angeles. How do you feel he's done so far in maybe tearing this down and then starting to build back up the Lions?
Oh, he certainly tore it down well.
Yeah,
I will give him credit for that. Getting rid of Matthew Stafford, getting the return that he got. I am not a Jared Goff guy. I was not a Jared Goff fan. I tried my best to have an open mind about him, but it has not worked, and I've been probably leading the charge in Lions land to overthrow him, even though there aren't really any better options. It's some of the draft, like, I understood that they couldn't rebuild everything right away. But going into a season where your receiving plan is Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman and Khalif Raymond, that's just not good enough, man. And like they drafted Levi Onwuzurike at the top of the second round. He's not been good. He's certainly still got time to play, like and prove that he belongs. But he's not been good so far. And it didn't help that Holmes came out after the draft. It's like, yeah, I was ready to trade up into the first round to get this guy. I'm like, maybe cool the Jets on that, dude. Some of the decisions just haven't. I will give them credit. They have done a very good job of managing the cap and clearing out. They're swallowing a ton of dead cap this year. There is over $62 million in dead cap on this roster. There is another $42 million on injured reserve. The best player on the team is Frank Ragnow, the center. He's been out for most of the season after a toe surgery. Evan Brown, by the way, former Brown, is the new starting center, and he's okay. He's not bad. He's decent. Doesn't do much in the run game, but he keeps Goff clean. Will keep Tim Boyle clean. So I'm a little bit more reserved about Brad Holmes than I am with Dan Campbell right now. I hope that I hope that his vision includes bringing another quarterback in at some point that isn't Jared Goff. Like, he insisted on having Goff, and that's a black eye for me, man. Because, look, I understand that he was a former number 1 overall pick, and you liked him. He was kind of your boy, and you got to understand that he isn't that anymore. So I got to do it. I'll divert for a second here. I got to do it on Twitter this week because I talked about Browns fans, trying to overthrow Baker, trying to, run him out of town, is worse than the Lions fans trying to prop up Jared Goff for being terrible, because he's terrible. And so many Browns fans were like, "Oh, give us Jared Goff," and I'm like, "Oh, you really don't know." So I'll say it here: if you think that Jared Goff is still the guy from 2017, look around at some of the other players who were really prominent in 2017 and look at where they're at now, and you'll understand that he's absolutely not the same guy. He is just the mental game has lost him. He honestly he needs like sports psychology therapy, and I think that would help him more than anything else. He is a shell of his former self. The big thing that we're picking up in the Detroit media is that it's wrong to say he doesn't care about losing and he doesn't want to win and doesn't strive, that it doesn't eat at him. But the way he's outwardly showing he's kind of like that California cool, like, I'm just going to go on to the next week and, everything will be okay. Like, I miss Baker's fire, man. I like it when Baker spits it out. Like, yeah, I'm pissed off that we lost and I'm pissed off how I play. Like, you never get that from Goff. And I think honestly, a reaction like that would really help fans here embrace him a little bit because, Cleveland is very blue collar. I'm from there. I know it. Detroit even prides itself more on that. The whole Detroit versus everybody mantra, and that's just not what Jared Goff is, and I don't think that really fits very well. My take is he has to be the necessary fall guy to be the guy who comes in after Stafford, who was very popular with most of the fan base, although a significant portion will tell you that he was the reason that they were losing. Those people can suck on a line for all I care, but. They got to get another quarterback in next year, and if they go in next year with Jared Goff as Plan A and Plan B isn't better than Tim Boyle, I'm going to have some words for Mr. Holmes.
Yikes! I mean, I was a Jared Goff guy back in 2016, but yeah, I agree with you. I just don't see the same player that we saw 3 or 4 years ago when the Lions went to the Rams went to the Super Bowl, and he's definitely regressed. And I would definitely take Baker over him all day, every day. It's anybody that's advocating for Goff is kind of that's not a smart decision.
The pendulum on Baker, man, my God, it's been a tough week to be on Browns Twitter.
Let's jump into the Browns because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about them. Obviously, I mean, right. The last couple of weeks have been bizarre with the OBJ stuff. Now it's, people, are done with Baker. There's some calling for Stefanski, which I think is completely ridiculous and just goes to show people don't know football. I mean, there's just the Joe Woods stuff. I mean, it's been a bizarre few weeks, and it's like it's taking a toll, I think, on all of us. I was talking to Jake Burns about it, and just talking about how miserable it's been, especially on Twitter. Like, it's just been too much.
I think some of it is that we as Clevelanders don't understand expectations for our football team very well.
That's exactly accurate.
And I get this from my parents who are Browns fans, and my dad. I had a nice little exchange with my dad this past weekend, and he was kind of blaming Baker, and then I said I made the quip like, well, Baker didn't play defense, and he sent back the text, nobody did, and I'm like, okay, Dad, thanks, Dad. At least you're not completely blaming everything on Baker. Yeah, it's we want the Browns to be better. They should be better. They should be better than 5-5. Excuse me. And the losses that they've had, you can't lose that way. Like, lifeless, hopeless, senseless. That's got to stop. That, like, Stefanski deserves criticism for that. Joe Woods deserves criticism for that. But, excuse me. You got to give them time to work it out. They're still in the thick of the AFC playoff race. I think that's important to remember. They have the ability to right themselves. Detroit's a win. You should look at it as a win. Now, if they lose this week, then all hell's going to break loose, and it deserves to.
Yes.
But then you get a shot at Baltimore. Even if you split with Baltimore, you're still in good shape. Like, the schedule it gets easier as the year goes on. I still think they're a 10-win team. I think they can go 10-7, and that's absolutely a playoff team in the AFC this year. So I'm the fluctuations. Excuse me, I've got a nasty cold that's like killing me at the moment. The fluctuations from week to week are really tough to deal with. And from a media standpoint, it's tough to deal with because we get so hyped after the Cincinnati game. We got so hyped after a couple of other wins, and then they do what they did last week, and they do what they did. The Chargers. Like, how does that happen? It's tough to reconcile. It's tough to process. It's easier when you're either really good or really bad. and they're just not that right now, and it's frustrating. And I understand the frustration. I feel it too. But you got to take a step back and take a little bit bigger look. Like they're the best. I'll throw the flag. They're the best last place team in football, and I don't expect them to stay in last place for long. I still think they're going to go to a playoff game, and I think in this year's AFC, if they're healthy, they can beat anybody in any playoff round. There's no reason to think that this team still can't get forward. They've got to show it to you in the next couple of weeks. And if they don't do to Detroit what they should do to Detroit, then you're going to have to start to answer some things. Like this is the spread of the game is what, 11 points, 10.5 points?
Yeah, something around that.
I have a hard time seeing Detroit scoring more than 3 times, maybe 4 times, 20 points tops. Cleveland's going to be able to score on that defense, even if Baker is injured. But again, this is a game. This is a game where Austin Hooper needs to step up. This is a game where J.C. Treader needs to show that he still belongs in the league, which he has not looked that way recently. This is a game where Joe Woods' defense has to pull its head out of its ass, stop having John Johnson play weird positions. The mesh points and coverage for the Browns defense have got to get fixed. This is a great week for that to happen because the Lions don't throw the ball well. They don't have good receivers that win at the catch point. They're not really great after the catch either. This is a week where you should have high expectations for the Joe Woods defense. And if it doesn't happen this week, then they absolutely have to consider replacing him right away. That's my take on it anyways.
Yeah, without question. I mean, this is not a good football team the Browns are playing. They need to go in there to First Energy Stadium on Sunday and take care of business and wipe the floor with them. And like you said, if they don't, then serious questions need to start getting answered. And it starts right there with the defense. If they don't go and whoop on Tim Boyle and the rest of this Lions offense, then like Joe Woods' his seat better be on fire come Sunday night.
Yeah, I would hope it would be one of those situations where he gets it one last chance against Baltimore, and that probably won't go too well, although Baltimore's very iffy this year. They're not the old Baltimore.
No.
And then they'd fire him in the bye week and promote somebody from within and ride out the rest of the season and hope that the little interim coordinator boost would work. And frankly, I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that might be the solution that they need. But yeah, they are not playing anywhere close to being the sum of their parts on defense, and that's been pretty consistent all year. I noticed that in the Houston game back in week 2. Like, how is Davis Mills throwing? How is he doing this to you? Like, that guy's awful. Their line is awful. How are they doing this to you? And he hasn't really stopped that, and that's. Like, you know, if the Lions come out and they run for 150 yards this week and they get a couple of red zone scores, the Lions' offense in the red zone, by the way, is miserable. They are dead last with a bullet. They're also dead last with a bullet in red zone defense. So if you're looking for a little bit of a key to the game, that's a good place to look. This is actually a week where I wouldn't be mad at Stefanski for going for it on 4th and goal from the 5, because normally I'm screaming, take the damn points, kick the field goal. This would be a week where you might want to go for it. I don't know. I'm expecting good things from the Browns this week. I really am. Whether I'm delusional or hopeful or just, you know, loaded up on cold medicine, I don't know, man. But I see the Browns getting right this week, and I see them carrying that over a little bit. That might be, you know, the Sudafed talking, but I'm not out on this team, Jack, and I don't want to be out on this team. I like them. Like, I freely admit that my sporting football passion is the Lions, but this is my hometown team, man, and I like a lot of the guys on this team. I like the structure of the team. This is a very easy Browns team to like from the outside, and I've been in their training camps. I did a couple of press conferences this year. I love where this team's potential still is. You got to get Chubb back. You got to get Hunt back. You got to get dialed in. The receivers have to play better. The defense, we jumped off that bridge already. Throw that over the 480 bridge and let it land and hope that it scatters and rebuilds itself nicely. I want Browns fans to not get so. I want the team also to not get so high one week and low the next. I want them to find a rudder and just like ride it out. and let the talent do the talking, because they don't do that well enough. There's my Sudafed thoughts on the Browns.
I really appreciate it. What's your prediction for Sunday? I'm going Browns 31, Lions 13. I think the Browns blow them out and get back on track, and get ready for some two big matchups against Baltimore.
Yeah, I think my official prediction, I read it at Real GM. I do the football meteorology piece every week there. Free plug for that. Was 32-16 Browns. So I think they double them up.
Good stuff. You mentioned you write for Real GM. Go ahead and plug everything you got going. I know you do a lot, and you do a damn good job of doing that.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I do Browns Wire. That was my baby. I was the original managing editor. I ceded control of that to Jared right after the draft this year, because running two sites was frankly just too much for me. I have two very good basketball playing kids that I want to spend time actually watching them play it. Instead of working 20 hours a day, I'm down to about 12, and that's good for me. I still do write at the Browns Wire quite a bit, Lions Wire. I do NFL Draft and General NFL at Real GM. I got to give them credit. I've been a paid employee there since 2004. You know how incredibly rare it is for loyalty in the business on their end and on my end for that to work. So I encourage people to check that out. It's General NFL. That's where all my draft stuff goes. That's non-team specific, and I love doing it. I got to give them credit for that. If you want to hear me riff on a bunch of different things, we do the Detroit Lions podcast. It's Detroit Lions podcast. It's on YouTube. We have a lot of fun, and we like to think that it's pretty friendly for fans on the outside too. And we always appreciate anybody that likes and checks that out too.
Well, thank you for coming on, man. We truly appreciate you doing it. We'll have you on more, because you're part of the crew now that talks Browns with us, and we always appreciate it, man. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, man. Anytime you need me, just let me know.
Thank you, brother. As always, you guys can follow me on Twitter at JackMcCurry08 and the Dogland at the Dogland. We'll be back probably Sunday night, Monday, to recap Browns Lions. So stay tuned for that. And as always, until next time, go Browns.